It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Joining us now, Ross Tucker, national analyst for a bunch of different outlets, Westwood One specifically. Been doing playoff games for them for years, analyst work for them for years. Ross, I know you have some exciting things coming down the pike, so make sure everyone's tuned into their local press releases to see where Ross is going to be more this upcoming NFL season. He also does the Eagles TV analyst work on their preseason. So Ross, very much appreciate your time. And I want to just dive right in with kind of this, this national perspective of the Commanders. I don't want to make you speak for literally every national analyst, but they have found themselves at the bottom of many, many rankings. I think a lot of that has to do with the quarterback situation here. And people just don't know what to make of Sam Howell, or it seems like those that have made up their minds say he's not going to be good enough. What do you make of Ron Rivera's decision to roll with Howell for the 2023 season?
Yeah, well, good to see you guys. Craig, good for having me. And I love that you got like a true blood and guts guy like Logan in the podcast game. That's amazing. Logan was when he played, one of maybe 7 tight ends that still blocked a little bit in the NFL, I think. So I always had an appreciation for Logan's game and the way he went about it because, man, way back, I always sound so old when I say this, but way back in the day, like, tight ends had to block. Yeah, and actually, there was always one guy on every out of the 3 on every team that was like just straight blocker. Like that's all he did. That has changed quite a bit. So love that Logan's in on the dark side now with the media. Yeah. Listen, I think the Commanders in everybody's mind are last in the division, and I think that's because they have more questions at the more important positions than the other teams do, right? The Eagles, kind of a known commodity. The Cowboys won 12 games last year. We also know that the Giants had a surprisingly good year last year, and they've even upgraded, getting that new center in John Michael Schmitz, whereas the Commanders, quarterback question for sure. And by the way, question doesn't mean bad. Question just means unanswered. Sam Howell might be awesome. We don't know. I hope he is. It'd be more fun if he is. It'd be great. But then you combine Howell with a new OC. So you got a new system and a questionable offensive line, I would say at this point, with some of the guys they have in there. There's unknowns on the O-line. There's unknowns with Bieniemy calling plays. There's unknown with Sam Howell as a quarterback. That's just too much for people. I don't blame them. I mean, if the Commanders answer all those questions positively, can they be better than the Giants and maybe have a winning season? Sure. But in the NFL, most of the time, when you have 3 major questions like that, you don't answer all 3 of them in the affirmative.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I think that's, like a really good perspective to bring in. Something I'd like to ask you, though, is you've seen kind of a precedent, at least in recent history, of offensive play callers coming to new systems. Obviously, Jacksonville with Patterson, New York with Daboll, and them elevating offenses in a way that's kind of unexpected. And I think, he's one of the best offensive minds in football, and having a guy that's had such a close proximity to him seems like a benefit. Do you think he can bring Sam along? Do you think he can insulate the offensive line? I kind of feel like if there's one factor that needs to be answered in the affirmative, it needs to be Eric Bieniemy and his ability to call plays and elevate this group. Do you think he can get that done?
Yeah, you know what? You're probably right, Logan. Like out of the 3 questions, the one that does the most to help solve the other 2. Although if Sam Howell's awesome, he can make Bieniemy and the O-line look good too, right? If Sam Howell turns out to be awesome. But no, the Bieniemy thing is interesting because like when you mentioned Daboll or Doug Peterson, my initial reaction was I watched both those guys call plays.
That's true.
And have a lot of success elsewhere, right? Like Peterson with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl with Nick Foles, Daboll in Buffalo with Josh Allen putting up crazy numbers. Whereas Bieniemy, which has always kind of been somewhat of a mystery, didn't really call the plays in Kansas City, right? Andy Reid gets the credit for that. So the thing I like about the Commanders, I think is so interesting, Bieniemy bet on himself in a major way, right? Like, let's put it this way. Bieniemy thinks he can do it. Bieniemy thinks he's the man, and he's gonna get the offensive line to play well, get Howell to play well. But I mean, first of all, there's a bunch of coaches that have left Andy Reid, and I'd say have mixed success.
It's a great
other
point.
places.
It's a great
You know,
point.
like a Matt Nagy, who had some success, right? Peterson obviously has had some ups and downs, but a lot of ups when he was in Philadelphia and a good run last year in Jacksonville. But guys, his quarterback was Patrick Mahomes. I mean, have you heard of him? Have you seen that guy play? I mean, I am confident that I could be at least a middle of the road offensive coordinator if Patrick Mahomes was my quarterback. So we'll see. It's going to be very different for Bieniemy. I mean, maybe he goes back to the Alex Smith playbook, and maybe Sam Howell can pull some of that stuff off, which I think would be interesting. But yeah, I think that you can make an argument. Although, you know what? I can make an argument for all of them. If the O-line ends up gelling and playing really well, man, that gives Sam Howell a much better chance. It makes it a lot easier on Bieniemy. As you know, and we all know, it's a symbiotic relationship between all three of these entities, and they're all very much tied together because they need each other to succeed.
So here's the thing that I think I get caught up on a bit, Ross, and where a lot of fans certainly get caught up that are far more emotionally invested than me, is this team was 8-1 last year. Like, people talk about them like they were a 4-win team. They won 8 games last year. And I guess the question I would ask,
with average quarterback play.
I would not go that far. That is being far too kind to the garbage quarterback play that was here last year. The question I would ask is, do you think this team is better? Because I think I look at it, and Logan and I have talked about this, so I can speak for him from our conversations, just relay what he says, not speak for him. But like, we both think they're better. We think that Bieniemy can elevate significantly. We think that again, the quarterback play was poor for a lot of last year. And then defensively, I think that we have higher hopes for more consistency, what they were in the second half of last year, much more than they were in the first. And I think it's trying to square, okay, if they were 8-1 last year, we think they're better this year. Why does everyone think they're going to barely win 6 games? And I think that is where a lot of folks struggle. So I would simply ask you this: do you think they're better than last year in terms of what you project for them in 2023?
No, I think they're about the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
And I mean, look, I called the Eagles game, Monday Night Football, when they beat the Eagles fair and square in Philly. I mean, that was unbelievable. And I don't know. I know you guys got rid of Scott Turner, and I'm sure there's reasons why, but I remember coming away extremely impressed with his game plan and how they played keep away in that game and won that football game. It was, I mean, until the Super Bowl was the only game Jalen Hurts lost as a starter last year, and it was against, and I thought Heineke had some solid games like that where in the fourth quarter he was a gamer, found a way for them to win. I think a lot of it has to do with the interior of the offensive line in particular. That interior trio, how well those guys are able to perform. We talked about how, obviously, because the thing is, and this must drive, Commanders fans crazy. You have a championship D-line. You have a championship receiving core, right? And maybe you could argue the whole skill position group. Like, they have, I think if you talk to people now, they'd probably say the hierarchy of positional value would be quarterback, O-line, D-line, maybe receiver or secondary. I mean, my point is the Commanders have a lot of players that other teams would want. They have a lot of really good players, but, O-line and quarterback might be the two most important, and those are still big, big question marks, which, by the way, leads me to a whole other question, which I'm still annoyed about, because you guys both sit here and you both say, average at best quarterback play. For the life of me, I don't understand why they didn't put Sam Howell in earlier. I mean, I guess Rivera, with the ownership stuff, was trying to make the playoffs to save his job. So when Wentz went bad, he put Heineke in. I can't remember if Wentz got hurt or went bad, whatever.
He got hurt. Yeah.
He got hurt. But anyway, it seemed to me like that would have been a real good time to get Hal a bunch of opportunities, a bunch of playing time last year, or even like when they decided to put Wentz back in. Was that the Cleveland game?
Yeah.
What
That was
a
the
disaster.
Yeah. I mean, the simple answer is Wentz was terrible through and through. He was good against Jacksonville in week 1. He was bad the rest of the games that he played. Heineke comes in because Sam is not ready yet. And because, Taylor had kind of earned that based off how he played the previous year. And he was good. That was the only good quarterback play they got was for what, Logan, 4 or 5 weeks of like average or in some games above average quarterback play. And by then, when he starts to go sideways in the Giants games, do you throw a rookie in there for his first starts in the most important games of your season, or do you figure that Taylor's going to pull himself out of it or ultimately go back to Carson? I mean, I was screaming from the mountaintops, Carson, no, please just roll it with Taylor. Or if you want to pull the plug and throw a wild card in there and go with Sam. But I mean, the simple answer is Taylor played too well when he got that shot as the backup, and Sam hadn't gotten many reps, and that's the answer to the question.
I think it's really interesting that you have to think with the ownership change impending or whatever, you got to think that Rivera's on the hot seat and that he knows that. And he knows the new owner is likely to want to bring in his own people. And maybe that's part of Rivera wanting to go with Sam Howell. Maybe he thinks like his shot is if he can win a bunch of games and show that he's got a good, young, inexpensive quarterback, such that the new owner will say, well, we don't want to mess with that. Because, I mean, I don't know. It's just remarkable to me that if this might be your last year as a head coach in the NFL, that you're going into it with a 5th-round pick with 1 start to his name.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's kind of an interesting thing, right? And I think a lot of people have put a lot of credence on that 1 start. The 1 start against Dallas late in the year where he was supported a lot by special teams and a lot of, quite frankly, by the defense. And I don't know if you watched that game. Do you have any thoughts on if you were the head coach, is that enough of a sample size to be like, I feel really good about Sam for 2023 for the Washington Commanders?
Thought he played well. I thought he looked the part. Did not look like the moment was too big for him. And the fact that I was like, well, why didn't they put him in earlier? Says I thought he played pretty well for sure. I guess the flip side of the counter would be, what were their other options this offseason?
Right.
Like
that's
what?
That's
I mean, they weren't going to get one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. So, and they did bring in sort of a security blanket in Brissett. And I got to tell you, if Brissett just plays for Washington the way he played last year in Cleveland, I think the Commanders could have a winning season for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Brissett was pretty darn good last year, actually. Cleveland was bad because the defense was terrible. And when Watson came back, Watson wasn't very good. Brissett, they actually scored more points, and Brissett played better, I think, anybody anticipated.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's kind of what we've said is if Sam Howell beats out Jacoby Brissett in camp, that means he's ready to be an NFL quarterback. Like, that's the bar. That's the barometer. And in some ways, that's what Taylor was last year as well. Like, I think Taylor's lower on that spectrum. But if you're better than Taylor Heineke, you're ready to play NFL quarterback. Sam was apparently not there last year, and I don't think he was given an honest chance to be. What's amazing is they thought Carson was, and despite the fact that he was throwing the ball on the ground all over training camp. But, they gave up a lot for him, and that's that. All right, Ross, let's wrap up with this. We got like 1 minute left. I want your favorite story that you can tell on a podcast from your time as a player in Washington. Your first stint at the start of your career or your last year of playing. Pick one, your favorite story.
Oh, geez, dude. I mean, I got about a million. The first one that jumps out to me was our first day of training camp in 2002. We had Marty Schottenheimer when I was a rookie in 2001. And whatever Marty said to us night before the training camp started, the hair on the back of my neck was standing up. I was ready to take my pen and just start stabbing people in the room. Like, I was so fired up. The next year, we have this ballyhooed coach, and he says, opening line, man, I went to 12 of these here training camps as a player. And, I can't remember one good thing I ever got out of it. I don't remember one thing that ever, But Mr. Snyder wants us to be here, so let's try to get something done tomorrow.
Oh,
that
my
was
gosh.
the start of the season speech for the 2002 Washington Redskins. We all looked at each other like, but then we were killing everybody in the preseason games. So we're like, okay, boy, I knew we were in trouble. I knew we were in trouble for a lot of different reasons, but yeah, I could give a bunch of other stories. You got to have me on again. I'll just do Spurrier and Schottenheimer stories.
That's
really,
Schottenheimer's
the man, so it'll be more just about that team. But yes, I'd be happy to tell Spurrier stories.
I would 1000% do an hour straight of Spurrier stories. 100% done. You let us know when we're there. Ross, this was great. Thanks for coming on, and we'll hopefully talk to you for Spurrier stories and other football analysis later this season.
Yeah, that'd be great. Great to see you guys. Great to talk with you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.